What's the crack, guys? Welcome to video number 2 in the GAA speed training video series. In this video I'm going to talk through what we're doing in the gym and how what we're doing in the gym can benefit us in terms of speed and how it can help us get quicker. There are certain things we can do in the gym that actually can make us slower, so I just want to talk you through all the different types of training and then give you recommendations for what you should focus on yourself. First of all, to break down training a little bit in terms of how the body responds to training. So I'm going to use the word hypertrophy first. Now, the word hypertrophy can refer to a couple of different things. In this case, we're going to try and differentiate between it using sarcoplasmic hypertrophy and myofibril hypertrophy. So sarcoplasmic hypertrophy is where the fluid in the muscle cell gets bigger. There's a number of different changes that can happen in the sarcoplasm to make the muscle bigger and appear bigger. And this is where you look at bodybuilders and they look quite muscular and they've quite a lot of volume in their muscles, but they mightn't necessarily be that strong. Whereas the other type of hypertrophy then is myofibril hypertrophy, which will be more associated with strength trained athletes, where they don't have as much muscle mass, they don't look as aesthetic, but they're much, much stronger. So the difference between the characteristics of this hypertrophy is the hypertrophy, which is more based on bodybuilding and which is more got to do with the sarcoplasm, isn't contractile tissue, and that's really important. So that's not contractile tissue, whereas the myofibril hypertrophy is contractile tissue. And if you're thinking about any movement that we do, contractile tissue is what does the movement. So when I flex my bicep, it's the contractile tissue, or the contractile tissue that I've talked about on this side of the screen, that's the stuff that makes the movement. Whereas if this bicep had more sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, it would be much bigger, but it wouldn't be as strong because the sarcoplasm doesn't actually make the movement. So that's the first kind of differentiation between those two. Now, in terms of training, if I was to say one was bodybuilding style, which would be, as an example, as an extreme example of this, it would be 10 by 10, and it would be maybe 1 to a minute and a half rest in between each. So 10 reps of 10 sets, German volume training, a minute to 90 seconds rest in between each set. That would be very much so sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. Myofibril hypertrophy then would be somewhere between the rep ranges of 6 and 8 reps or even lower, and that's where we're talking about growing the actual muscle fiber and the contractile tissue. So when we're talking about speed, we're talking about overcoming inertia. So we're talking about like getting off the mark, and we're talking about contracting our muscles and generating force in a particular direction. And we need that contractile tissue in order to do that. So there are two examples of different styles of training which elicit different responses. Now, the training spectrum generally kind of works along those. So you're going to have a mixture of both with most types of training and most training programs. Again, you're going to have a mixture of both. But we want to focus more on this end of things where we're looking at that muscle fiber and getting that bigger. The next thing then is neural adaptations. So neural adaptations is got to do with your nervous system and recruiting motor units, and as a result, contracting those muscles. So someone who is, as an example, if you ever hear stories about an old granny who lifted a car off someone and because the person was dying, what's happening in that situation? Basically in that situation, she's in a position where she's like, she knows she has to lift this car to save that person. It's not that she's got more muscle fibers than me or you, or she's been bodybuilding for 20 years. It's the fact that her nervous system is turning on and putting everything into that effort. And that will obviously take a lot out of her, but that's the potential of the nervous system. So she's really activating all those muscles, and as a result, she is much, much stronger. So we want to try and, again, build the muscle fibers, but also build the nervous system to be able to activate those fibers, to get the most out of them, to get the most out of our strength. So if we were to look at that over kind of, we'll say, different categories throughout the year, typically when an athlete starts with us, we'll first of all look for them to build a bit of muscle. Okay, so get a baseline of muscle mass, because with strength you need muscle. If you don't have any muscle, you're not going to be strong. If you're strong, you're going to have a bit of muscle. Okay, they're two massive correlators. So usually build a baseline of muscle or build a substantial amount of muscle. When we get to a weight that we're comfortable with, when we get our body composition to a weight that we're comfortable with, we'll really start to transition to more relative strength. So we'll transition out of that pure hypertrophy phase and more into a strength phase. Okay, our strength phase then would look more like 5x5 versus we'll say 3x6 to 8 or 3x10. So that strength phase then will start to focus a little bit more on honing in on that myofibril hypertrophy, less on the sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, but then honing in again on that nervous system and that motor unit recruitment. The next phase then that typically we'll progress people onto is a power phase. So with the power phase, it's a little bit different. So we're moving weight at more speed, so we're using lighter loads. So on the hypertrophy phase, moderate intensity loads, okay, so you're talking maybe 70 to 80%. And when you're talking about your strength phase, you're talking in around your 90% or higher. And when you're talking about your power phase, you're talking much lower again. It could be in around, well, depending on the movement really, but the weight is usually lighter and you're moving the bar at more speed or you're moving the weight at more speed. So that can be a typical progression of a program over the period of a year. You might focus in on your hypertrophy at the start of the year, your strength mid-season, and then your power would definitely be closer to championship. So if you actually see the programs, the free programs on the Gym and GAA series, what you have is your first couple of movements will be 6 to 8 reps. That's focusing on your myofibril hypertrophy. And then after that, it'll start transitioning to things like 8 to 10 reps and 10 to 12 reps, which is more your bodybuilders type hypertrophy. And then in around championship, it focuses way more on power. So you'll see that there's actually lighter loads used in around championship time. You'll see that the reps are a lot lower. So you're talking 4 reps rather than 10 reps. And again, that is specifically because we want to target that nervous system and get the most out of that nervous system. If you're making recommendations for an athlete, like what should you focus on, that would be based on your numbers. So if you're quite light and you need to put on a bit of muscle mass, you'd focus a little bit more, start with 6 to 8 reps and maybe doing some 8 to 10s and 10 to 12 reps in your program. If you are someone who has got a good bit of muscle mass and we really need to focus on that relevant strength, you're talking more in around your 5 rep range or even lower. And then you're talking about more sets in that case. So you might do your 5x5, or it could even be 5 reps by 6 to 8 sets altogether. And then if you're someone who has got that really good relevant strength, you'd progress towards doing more power-based movements, which are a lot more technical, learning those and learning how to express that power within the gym. And then in the next video, we'll talk about expressing that power in terms of generating speed in different directions. To give you an idea in terms of what to focus on getting stronger, okay? So whatever movement you're doing at the start of your program, it should at least be 6 to 8 reps. That first movement on every single day of your program should at least be 6 to 8 reps. Focus on getting stronger at that movement. That's going to mean that you're building the size of those muscle fibers. When it comes towards championship, switch on to that championship program, which is going to be more power-based, lower reps, and focus a little bit more on activating that nervous system and reduce the total volume of work that you're doing, which will reduce the total amount of fatigue on your muscles. Now, with these different styles of training come obviously different intensities, so you want to try and lift as heavy as you can for the majority of these, except maybe the power ones, you want to move those at speed. But as an example, with the bodybuilding style stuff, which is more sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, you can talk about like time under tension. So you can talk about 3 seconds down, 2 seconds up, 3 seconds down, 2 seconds up. Whereas with all of your movements, and this is really important for the myofibril hypertrophy and also for activating and getting the most out of your nervous system, you've got to move everything as fast as you can. Now, that doesn't mean that you lighten the load. That means that if you're bench pressing, whether you're going for 6 reps or 4 reps or 10 reps, move the bar as fast as you can. So when it's down at your chest, press as fast as you can. You can go slow and control on the way down, but press as fast as you can. The idea of going down slow and going up slow does not transition well into sport. Okay, think about sport. If you're trying to hand someone off, you're doing it powerfully. Okay, you're really trying to push them away as hard as you can. You're not doing a very gentle handoff. Or if you're accelerating, you're driving those legs as hard as you can into the ground. You're not doing it slowly. All right, so that's really important. That is not to be confused with, say, speed when we talk about moving the bar at speed in power training. So when we're using the lighter loads, the focus is moving the bar at speed. And that will be things like high hang, high pulls as an introduction to a clean or a power clean, and also something like a dumbbell snatch or some kind of thruster movement. That's speed, which is got to do with, again, power training. When you're doing your strength style training, you're talking about moving the bar as fast as you can, but you're going to be challenging yourself. So if you're going for a 5 rep max and you're strength training and it's your last set and you're grinding, that's obviously, the bar is going to be moving slow, but you're going to try and move it as fast as you can still. Typically with the bodybuilder style training, we would have less rest, but when we're talking about 6 to 8 reps, or if we're talking about less than 6 reps, you're going to need more relevant rest. So you know yourself, if you're doing a heavy set of squats and it's 6 reps, you're going to need to sit down for a while and do something in the meantime. So with all the programs that we've given out on the Gym and GA series, they've all had something to do whilst you're resting to make use of that time. And the same thing will apply with the power-based stuff. You're going to be giving yourself a lot of rest there because you need to let that nervous system recover before you go back into your next set. So again, guys, for sport and for developing speed, we are not talking about bodybuilding. We are talking about developing contractile tissue, myofibril tissue. We're talking about getting stronger. This all happens on a spectrum. So if we're talking about nervous tissue and motor unit recruitment over here, if we're talking about our myofibril hypertrophy over here and our sarcoplasmic hypertrophy over here, it all works on a spectrum. So you're going to be getting a good amount of both, or a good amount of all, when you're weight training. When you are starting off, really just focus on getting stronger. And typically it's good advice to just try and get stronger when you're in the gym and focus on that first movement in the program. Get stronger in that movement. That's really, really important. With the same technique, solid technique each time, get stronger at that movement. And then when you get more advanced and you get more comfortable in the gym, learn power-based movements, power clean, high hang, high pull, dumbbell snatch. And then we can use, we'll talk about the next video then, and how to transfer that power that you've built in the gym into speed on the pitch. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you got any questions, leave them in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video. Slán.
Yes.